Hi everyone, it's Laura from Crafty Not Shifty, and today I've got my 10 cards 1 kit video featuring the Love From Lizi February card kit. Before we get into the card making, I just wanted to let you all know that I will actually be giving away one of these kits to celebrate a whole year of being on the Love From Lizi design team, so keep an eye out for this post on Instagram and just follow the instructions in the description. Okay, so into the card making. For this first card, I've got some extra dies, and I used this cut apart piece with the candles and the happy birthday message, and I just used a 3 and a 1 for 31. So I went ahead and ran that through my die cut machine, first on top of the patterned paper, and then again on top of some craft foam that I'd covered in double-sided tape. So now I've got my quickie glue pen and I'm applying just a small amount of adhesive on the centre section of each of these flames, and that's just going to give me a place to apply the gold gilding flakes on top. So you do have to wait for this to dry just a little bit before you go ahead and add the flakes on the top, otherwise everything will just kind of smush out and the flakes won't hold as well. So if you just wait for a few moments for that to dry and then go ahead and apply a small amount of the flakes on top of each of the flames, it's really easy. You just kind of press that down. You want to be careful not to kind of have any fan going or anything like that when you use these flakes, because they will fly everywhere. And then once you've allowed that to dry completely, just go ahead and take a brush and brush off any of the excess. Next, I applied double-sided tape onto the back of this piece that I'd created, and I'm allowing that tape to overlap the 3 and the 1 because I am going to be inlaying the pieces back in there, so it's okay that that adhesive is exposed. And I've created a card base out of the matte black cardstock and just cut that down to be a slightly larger square to leave that border around the edge. So I'm peeling the backing off the foam 3 and just carefully lining that back up into this section inside and pressing that into place. And then, because I'd covered this in double-sided sticky tape, I can go ahead and inlay the patterned paper piece. So the pattern itself kind of lines back up, and that kind of disguises the numbers on the front of the card. You can't see it as clearly as you can in real life in the video, but you can see them there because of that shadow that's created by the extra dimension. Okay, so on to card 2. For this one I've got the striped patterned paper. It's a really nice kind of almost a cream and black stripe, and then it's got some multicoloured polka dots on the background as well. Here I have the layered chipboard pieces, and I chose these as one of the recommended add-ons to go with this particular kit, and I'm just gently laying this on top of my piece. I'm trying to decide exactly where everything's going to go, so I didn't want to press down too firmly at first. So next I'm going to grab some ribbon, and I'm going to use 2 different sizes or 2 different thicknesses in 2 different colours. So I've got the yellow and the green, and the green matches really well with this cardstock, and the yellow highlights the yellow in the flags. So I'm adding some tape onto the back of this and then pressing the green thinner piece of ribbon right into the centre on the back side of the yellow ribbon, so then I can fold over the edges and lay that down in the middle. And I'm doing the same on the other end, and this just creates a layered ribbon, so the yellow and the green are perfectly lined up and one on top of the other. So once I've got that pressed in place, I applied some more double-sided tape, this time to the back of that striped patterned piece, and then I was able to attach the ribbon. Before doing that, I had to go ahead and remove the banner piece, and because I hadn't pressed that down yet, I just gently laid that on top of the card. I was able to lift that up without any problem, and as you just saw there, I was happy with the position of the photograph piece, so I just went ahead and pressed that in place before turning this piece over. So I'm just removing the release tape here, and then I can use the lines on my grid mat to help me line up this ribbon so it's perfectly positioned on the front of my card. Because this is such a simple design, you definitely want those lines to be nice and straight, otherwise it will stand out in a negative way. So because the card will already have so much dimension because of those layered chipboard stickers, I didn't want to add any craft foam to the back of this piece, so I've applied some tape and then I'll just stick that directly down onto the card front. You might notice here throughout this video, whenever I stick something down with the double-sided tape, I'm just peeling away the corner edges, and then that helps me line everything up and make sure I'm happy with the position, and then I can just hold that down firmly in place and peel the backing away, and that will allow everything to stick down exactly where I've positioned it. That's definitely a tip that's helped me position everything nice and straight on the front of my cards, because it can be quite difficult to just go ahead and eyeball that and just have one chance to stick everything down with your strong tape. So I pressed that banner piece into place again, and then applied some Wink of Stella onto the top of the cupcake here, and that's it for this card. So for card 3 I decided to use a stitched rectangle die to create my patterned paper panel for the front of the card rather than just using my paper trimmer. I've then got this circle die and I'm going to use that on top of the square cut apart with the cupcake pattern, and I'm going to use that hanging slightly off the edge of the card. Rather than just sticking that down flat, I decided to place that where I thought I was going to have it on the card front, line up that die and then tape it down in place and run that through my die cut machine to cut that section out of the card. And then I'll go ahead and line up the cupcake piece once this is all added to the front of the card with a bit of dimension. Okay, so I was just checking that all of that lined up perfectly, and then I'm trying to bring in some extra interest on this card base, and I thought that one of these gold stickers would be perfect, so I used this gold flag piece that says Dream Big. And then in a similar way to how I created a layered ribbon earlier, I'm layering up this pink ribbon here by applying some double-sided sticky tape that's extremely thin onto the back of this piece, and then I'll peel the backing off and lay another colour over top. And again I'm using this, I think this is the first time I've used it, I'm using this gold piece. So once I've got that pressed down in place, I'll just cut off any excess and then I'll lay that on the bottom section of the card, again just using some tape to hold that in place. So once those edges are tucked in, I can go ahead and apply this piece to my card base. And to do that, again, I'm just applying some tape. Usually you'll see me using my ATG gun. I haven't fallen out with it, it's just ran out of tape and I haven't refilled it yet. So when I was making these cards, I just grabbed what was quickest and to hand, and that was the roll of tape that you can see here. So I'll peel off all that backing and then go ahead and line that up on my card base. Because of the die cut window section, I couldn't go ahead and use that trick that I showed you earlier of peeling back 2 corners because I didn't just have 2 nice clean straight pieces of tape to work with. So I've laid my cupcake back inside of the section that it lays into, and because the pattern paper piece is smaller than the card base, I just went ahead and used my ruler to draw a pencil line as to where the edge is of the patterned paper, because I wanted to cut off any excess to make sure that it's all laid nice and flush in one straight line. I then applied some foam squares onto the back of this piece and peeled off the backing and just carefully lay that into the section where it fits, being careful to line up those scalloped edges so they matched on the patterned paper and the topper. So the cupcake would not be complete without some sparkle, so I went ahead and used my Wink of Stella again to apply some sparkle to the frosting section, and then I also used my sequins from the kit to apply a little bit more interest to that background piece. And I'm just using, this is a slightly different tool to what you may have seen me use previously in my videos. This is new to me, and this is a different kind of pickup tool for your sequins, and I found that it worked really well. It's got 2 different ends, one is slightly smaller, one slightly larger, and one thing that's really nice about this tool is the caps on those ends to make sure that no dust particles kind of get stuck on there and it doesn't get kind of gunky and gross, so you can keep it clean really easily with those caps. I also decided to add some sprinkles to this cupcake, and I love how these turned out. I used some of my Nuvo drops to do that, and instead of applying a drop, I just applied a line. And I think they look really sweet on the front of the card. Okay, so on to card number 4. So for this card, I'm going to be doing some stamping. So before what you're seeing here, I did go ahead and stamp the balloon onto some full stick post-it note, and I stamped that a couple of times and cut those out so I would have some masks for the front of this. So I'm going to stamp each balloon and then apply a mask over the top so I can stamp another one in a different colour, and then that will allow one to look like it's sitting behind the other. Now because these are balloons, you probably could get away without doing the masking because balloons by nature are usually slightly transparent and you can sometimes see through one to the one behind it, if that makes sense. But because these colours are so bold, I wanted to make sure that I had each one masked off so they just sat nicely and I didn't end up with any kind of muddy colours. So as you can see, I'm just switching colours before I stamp each time, and I'm just cleaning that stamp off with my stamp chamois, and then going ahead and switching to the next ink. So once I've got all of those stamped down, or at least I thought I had them all stamped down, so I peeled off the backing, the masking, so I could see what it looked like, and I just decided that my collection of balloons looked a little bit sparse and I wanted to go back in and add some more, so I just replaced some of those masks. And then using the same colours, I went ahead and added a couple more of each balloon. So I'll just go ahead and skip forwards to where I'm nearly finished with stamping all these different balloons, just because you don't want to be sitting watching me stamp balloons all day long. So it didn't take too long to put this together, however there are 10 cards to go through in this video, so I didn't want to bore you too much with the process. Okay, so once I was happy with all of those, I also added the present, and I stamped that in another ink, and these are all Simon Says Stamp inks. So next I went ahead and added the balloon strings using a black jelly roll pen. This is actually a glaze pen, and it's almost got like a dimension to it when you apply it down on your card, so it really does pop off that white background. And I'm just being careful here to make sure that I've got the same amount of strings as I have balloons, so you can see me kind of counting and figuring that out. So next I decided to add some edging to this stamped panel piece by using the long thin stickers from the 12x12 sticker sheet. So there's enough length on this particular piece to run it along one side and then also the other side, and there's just a little bit left over. So this stamped piece is cut slightly smaller than the 4 1/4 by 5.5 note card, and I decided to help this pop from the background just a little bit more to use some of the black patterned paper and to centre that up. So again, I'm just using that trick with the tape where you fold back the edges just a little bit on each side, and that just gives you the wiggle room to help you line that up, and then when you're happy with the position you just peel away those edges and it sticks down perfectly. So I'm applying some adhesive to this piece here, and I was about to stick it down, and then I decided I wanted to add something else to the background as well. So I brought in the brads. I got these brads as a recommended add-on to the kits, and I'm just using a foam pad here and also a paper piercer just to create some guide holes for where I want to put each of these brads. So you do have to push the kind of the arms or the legs or whichever you want to call them of the brads through the paper. So I'm just sort of poking my paper piercer through and then wiggling it around to make a slightly larger hole, and then that makes it really easy just to pop those through. So these are really nice. They almost look like glittery Nuvo drops, only they're a lot firmer, so they definitely wouldn't squish in the post or anything like that because they're completely solid, and they're really quick and easy to just go ahead and poke through the card, and then you just fold back the arms or legs. I think I've heard them referred to as both. So you just press those gently with your fingers, and they're really kind of bendy, so it's not difficult at all just to press those down. Okay, so once I'm happy with where I've got those, I can go ahead and peel off the backing on this piece, and then I decided rather than adding that flat, oh no, I'm lying, oh yes, here we go. So rather than adding that down flat, I'm just sticking that down onto another piece of craft foam. Again, I do quite like to do this rather than using some foam tape, just because it gives a really even raised dimension behind your cardstock, which means it's much more solid, and it's less likely to kind of buckle whenever you're posting it or sending it to someone. So again, I've got that double-sided tape, and then I'll go ahead and centre that up on top of the black piece, just making sure that the card is facing the right way and that it opens on the right side. Okay, so on to the next card, and I've got this gold glittery patterned card. And I'm using a trick that I used actually in last month's 10 cards 1 kit as well, where I've cut down a frame and then cut the inside of the frame out. So I've just left with this narrow border around the black piece. This particular card, I did actually do a sneak peek of it in the Love From Lizi group. I think this is actually my favourite card. It's definitely one of my favourites. So I've applied double-sided tape to the back of this black piece of cardstock that's cut to be ever so slightly smaller than the gold, and then I'll just layer that on top, and you would never know that we've cut the centre out to make the most out of that gold cardstock. So then along the back I'm just applying some more double-sided tape, and then I'll use that to position this panel on top of my card base. This particular panel piece is measured to be the exact same size as the 4 1/4 by 5.5 note card, and again that's made from the matte black cardstock. Once I'm happy with the positioning of this, I'm just using that same trick of peeling back the tape edges to place that onto the card. Now I've got this cut apart. This is Love Your Fabulous Self, and I'm applying some of the peel off stickers just around the outside. There's kind of a frame around that sentiment piece in the middle there, so I'm just using that as a guide and applying the peel offs along the edges, and I'm slightly letting the peel offs overlap the edge of the frame. And then what I'll do is once I've got all of these pieces in place, I'll go ahead and use my craft knife to just press down into the corner and effectively cut the peel-offs and miter the corners at the same time. So you can see me doing that here. So I'm just pressing my craft knife, following the angle of the corner, and then just lifting away any of the excess that's been cut, and that leaves you with really nice kind of mitered corners, so the peel-offs join together really nicely with no overlap, and it's really difficult to see the kind of visible line where they meet. So I did the same thing to all 4 of those corners, and then once I was finished I added some more tape onto the back of this piece, and then I'm going to mount that up onto the gold glitter cardstock, and this is using that section that I'd cut out from the middle. I'm adding a little bit more tape to this just because of the texture of the glitter cardstock to make sure it's got a really nice firm hold and it doesn't shift around and it stays in place. So I'll line that up, and again that just kind of mirrors that gold framing that we've got on that background piece there with the gold and the black. We've then got another outline of gold before the sentiment piece, and I've just cut that down. And again, I'll just apply some tape and stick that down, not quite in the centre. I decided rather than sticking it down perfectly central, I'd actually layer this slightly towards the top, and then I'd be able to add something else. So I'm just playing with the tabs there, making sure I've got a good grip so that helps me kind of centre everything in place, and then again just peeling away those edges to stick everything down. So for my something extra, I decided to add these mirror pieces. It's almost like, well, they're almost like little arrows, but when you put them all together, it's like a chevron pattern. And I'm just following the line of that gold cardstock piece at the bottom there, just to make sure that all of the points kind of line up in place. I'm just making sure that I've got room for all of them, and then laying them down. I started on one side and then added the one on the opposite side, and then filled in the middle to make sure I'd have nice spacing. Okay, so on to the next card. This card was inspired by one that I received from a friend of mine, and she sent me a really lovely card that had like a geometric diamond on it, and it said "Girl, you rock" as the sentiment. So I decided to do something similar with this one. I've cut out one of the speech bubbles from the cut apart sheet, and I'm going to use that to add my sentiment, and I'm going to use these stickers. So I applied them onto the edge of a ruler just to help me with my spacing, and then when I was happy with how they looked, I just pressed the top of them down and peeled the ruler away. For the most part that will help them to stick to the speech bubble, but as you can see here the Y kind of got away, and I had to add that one on manually. Now the K in this alphabet, for me, I felt like it was a little bit too large, so I stuck everything down. I found it was a little bit too large and it was hanging over the edge, so I just gently peeled it away and then used my scissors to trim off some of the excess from the top and the bottom of each of the sections of the letter K, and then stuck that down. And you, again, you know, you can't tell that it's been altered, but I just think it fits inside the speech bubble a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and stick down this patterned piece of paper. I've trimmed this to fit on top of the A2 note card with a little bit of a border around the edge. So there's the black border and then this kind of rainbow pattern on the background here. And once I'm happy with how that's centered, I'll just peel away the excess tape and stick that in place. So next I went ahead and cut off the twine and also the tag from my diamond piece, and I applied some double-sided foam mounting squares onto the back of my speech bubble, and I just pressed that into place and then added some multi-medium onto the back of the diamond, and then I was able to stick that down in place. I felt like it needed a little something extra, so I found the crown inside of the sticker book sheet and I added some tiny foam squares onto the back of that so it would all lay kind of flush with the same amount of dimension, and it looks like that's just balanced on top of the diamond. I wanted to add a little bit more shine, and these gold stars were perfect for adding that to the background, so I just flipped through the various pages and picked out a couple of different sizes of the stars and stuck those in kind of a random pattern across the background, and also added one to the speech bubble here as well. I felt like that was the perfect touch just to finish this off. So once that panel was all complete, I just needed to go ahead and add some tape onto the back of this and then stick that down onto the yellow note card. So there I just gave you a closer look as to how I've arranged my tape for most of the cards on this video. Okay, so for this next card, I've again got another piece of craft foam with double-sided tape on it, and I'm just applying that to the back of one of the cutter parts. I've gone ahead already and cut up my card panel, which is that pattern piece that you can see here, and I've also cut a cutter part. Here I've got some ribbon. This is the same yellow ribbon that I'd used earlier in the video, and I'm again just using the grid lines on my craft mat to perfectly centre this on my card, or perfectly line it up on my card, and then just using some tape to stick that to the back. And then I'm doing the same thing with a piece of the thin black ribbon. I like this technique of layering up the ribbons. I think the thicker and the really thin ribbon laid on top of each other looks really nice, and it definitely complements the pattern in this particular cutter part, which you'll see in a second. So just to amplify this a little bit more, I decided to get the peel-offs out again and go ahead and outline the ribbon piece at the top. And then I believe I also added that at the bottom. So once I had that all stuck down, I could bring back in the cutter part piece. And I just went ahead and peeled off the double-sided sticky tape on the back, and then I just lined that up, making sure that the horizontal lines around the word "the" lined up perfectly with the ribbon. So then to finish this off at the bottom, I just added this gold arrow from the sticker book, and then also another peel off, again just using the grid lines on my mat to make sure that the peel off was added straight onto the card. Once I'd tucked in those edges, I could go ahead and mount this onto my card base. I decided to use a pink card base because it complemented the polka dot pattern on the background piece. And again, I'm just adding some double-sided tape, peeling the corners back, and allowing that to help me line this up on the front of the card. So it's a really quick and easy card, but I think the gold shine from that arrow piece definitely makes it look extra special. Okay, so for this next card, this is something that I find myself doing quite often with patterned paper, where I'll take two pieces that are exactly the same size, I'll cut one piece at a slight angle, and then I'll use that to make kind of a an accent corner, I suppose, on the card piece. Now, for some reason, my tape had disappeared at this point. It had kind of got lost amongst the mess on my desk, so I just went ahead and used the adhesive that was closest to me, which was actually a glue stick, to go ahead and glue this piece down in the corner. I have here one of the sentiment pieces from the sticker sheet, and also this heart piece here, and I wanted to try and make this run as a continuous line across the card. So I trimmed off the excess on the side there, and then I realised that I was going to have to kind of shift everything over to the right a little bit to make sure everything was lined up perfectly on the card. So I just shifted that piece over, and then everything kind of worked nicely and fit across the line that I'd created with that patterned paper. Just on the left hand side, I decided to add some of the peel-offs. I added one of the thicker pieces, but I decided I wanted it to be just a little bit thicker, so I also added one of the thin strips right up against that, and it just looks like one slightly thicker peel-off. So I also decided to help make that sentiment strip that I'd created stand out a little bit more. I'd outline that with some more of the peel-offs as well. So again, I just lay that down, allowed the edges to hang slightly off the card, trimmed off any excess where needed, and then just folded the corners around. I found that that's the best way to kind of make sure you've got really neat edges. You can just go ahead and trim this up against the card, but I prefer to leave just a tiny bit and then fold the edges. So I have this Celebrate piece. This is another one of the cutter parts, and I decided to use my corner chomper to round the corners rather than leave that as a square, just to add a little bit more interest. And I'm just using my Tombow glue, that must have been the closest one to me at this point, and then I'm just adding that on top of my leftovers from the gold foil, the gold glitter card. Once I'm happy with the position, I again went ahead and rounded those corners just to mirror the rounded corners on the Celebrate piece. Once that was all done, all I needed to do was go ahead and stick this down on the card, and to do that this time I decided to keep it relatively flat and to just use the Tombow glue again. Finally, all I had to do to finish this card was add this piece to a green card base. And again, I'd cut this panel to completely cover the front of that card base, but made sure to use a coordinating colour so the colours are consistent when you open that up. Okay, so for card 9, I believe we're up to, I wanted to use this striped pattern piece. This is one of my favourite pattern pieces from the kit, and I wanted to use those colours that were in the centre, so I chopped off the top panel and the bottom, and then just cut that down so it would fit nicely across my card front. And again, I'm bringing in the sticker sheet, and I'm adding this banner here, and that reads Sweet Moments. And then I decided to bring in these wooden hearts, and you actually can't see because it was slightly off camera, so I edited it out. However, I did apply adhesive onto the top of each of these using a glue pad that I have. I just pressed each of them into the glue pad so they were nice and sticky on the top, and then applied the flakes over the top of this and just allowed that to set for a minute, and burnished it in with my fingers, and then used a stiff paintbrush to kind of rub off any of the excess and really bring out the shine on those pieces. So my plan for these was to add them to the card in a cluster, and it almost makes like a flower pattern, and you'll see me bring that together in a minute when I attach those to the card. So I decided to use my multi-medium and the matte finish to attach these. This is a really useful adhesive because if any of it kind of oozes out of the sides, or if anything shifts slightly, it's not going to leave a sheen on your card when it dries, because it dries with a matte finish. So I was placing the hearts and just making sure that I had everything centered exactly as I wanted it before I added the adhesive, and then I just stuck those down, and I also applied an acrylic block on the top in just a moment to help that all stay in place. To highlight the separation between these different colour blocks, I decided to use the peel-off stickers again, and I'm just laying those down, following the lines that are along the background. Had I have thought of this first, I would have been able to do it without having to work around these hearts, or also the Sweet Moments gold banner, but it wasn't too difficult to do that. I just cut the pieces and buttered them up against the hearts or the banner where necessary, and you can't tell, you wouldn't know that I hadn't applied one big long strip. So once I'd finished with that, I again added another sticker, and this is the Today is Beautiful sentiment, and I just lay that along one of those peel-off stickers, and my hearts by now were dry, so I removed that adhesive block, or that stamping block rather, and then used another one of the brads to create the centre of the flower. I used a yellow card base for this particular one, and as I had my Tombow glue on my desk at this point, that's the adhesive I used. For me, that's generally how I work. There's certain adhesives that I favour for particular things, like I'll always use my Xyron for vellum, but generally it's whatever's to hand. Okay, so for this final card, I used a tag that I had in my stash as a template to create a tag out of patterned paper. And I just used a hole punch to punch the hole in the top there, and then I've got these stickers, so I went ahead and coloured these, and I've not got all of the colouring in this video just because it would make it too long. If you're still with me, then thank you for sticking around for, what are we on, I think about 27.5 minutes. So I edited out some of that colouring so you wouldn't be here all day, and then I'm just going to go ahead and peel off those stickers and lay them down on the tag, and then I'll use this tag as a focal point on my card. So for this card, I decided to actually use a white card base and then this heart pattern, and this particular heart pattern is actually the back side of the 12x12 cut apart. There is the same pattern just in a slightly smaller scale in the 6x6, but I liked these larger hearts, so I decided to use the back of the 12x12 in this case. So I stuck the tag down onto this pattern piece, and then again, as I have with many of these cards, I decided to outline the focal area with the peel-offs. This is something I really like to do when I've got different pattern papers layered on top of each other. I think it just adds a little something extra to the card. So as one final touch for this one, I've brought back the sequins. I've got them poured out into 2 little sequin trays here, and that was just to help me kind of rummage around and find the colours and the shapes that I wanted. There's quite a few different colours in here, and also these black hearts, and I decided the black hearts would work really well with that patterned paper with all of the colourful hearts, so I decided just to stick to using those around the card, and I also used a gold sequin inside of the tag section where I punched out the hole. Once I was happy with the number of sequins that I'd applied, that was this card finished, and that is it for my 10 cards. So I'll just quickly do a run through of all 10 cards, and also I just wanted to remind you about the giveaway that I'll be having on Instagram for the Love From Lizi February card kit. So if you haven't already checked that out, then head over to my Instagram and you'll find a post on there detailing how you can enter this giveaway. So we've got that 10th card there, the happy birthday card, and then the layered chipboard piece. We've also got this one here, and you can see that I added an extra brad to this one after I'd finished filming. And then got this piece here with the sprinkles made out of the Nuvo drops. I really liked how those turned out, so I think that's a technique I'll be using again. We've then got the Celebrate card with the sentiment strip along the edge of the patterned paper. I think my favourite card, this Love Your Fabulous Self with the black and the gold. I really like that matte black cardstock. I think it works really well for the card bases. Then I've got the Celebrate the Everyday Moments. I think that is probably my second favourite card. My You Rock card, which was inspired by a card I'd received from my friend Pam. I've got this 31 happy birthday card, which is from my friend Katie. And then finally, I've got the horizontal striped patterned paper piece here, which is the Today is Beautiful card. So thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, then let me know in the comment section. Let me know which card was your favourite, and I'll hope to be back again soon to share another video with you. On screen right now are a couple more videos that I think you might enjoy, and you can also go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already by clicking on the logo. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.